few questions from people today, and I guess I'll start with the first one. So Amrita wants to know how to put recommendations into OTCAS. This is an OTCAS application that I have opened, an account that I just opened literally so I can see what you guys see. She wants to know, how do you upload it? You need to upload your letters of recommendations, you need to go to supporting information. So you're going to go to supporting information. You're going to see this pop up on your screen. You're going to see where you can upload evaluations. You can upload observation hours and experiences, achievements. All of that stuff is going to be there. What you do to upload your recommendation letters is you go to evaluations. Right now, currently, because it's closed and the system does not open until July 18th, you can't actually request any recommendation letters from people right now on the system itself. But what you do is you go to evaluation. It's going to ask you for that person's contact information, their email and phone number, and even, if I'm not mistaken, your relationship with this person, whether it's a coworker or whether it's a faculty, staff member who taught you something. So I hope that answers that question for you, Amrita. You had another question too, Amrita, that it says, is the undergraduate prerequisite GPA and other GPAs calculated by OTCAS different than what appears in our transcripts? Now, that actually is going to depend on the schools that you are applying to, because, for example, where I went to school, my school only looked at the last 60 hours for division courses, and it worked out in my favor as a lower GPA student because my freshman year I didn't do well. So schools that look at the upper division courses and the last 60 hours, usually students just tend to have, according to the research, higher grades there in those years. But what they do is each GPA is different, and what you upload onto OTCAS is you literally have to insert each course and what you got in that grade. So it should, the overall, be comparable to what's on your transcript. And what they'll do there, they're going to split it up too by semesters, and they can see what it is that you did your junior year and senior year if they're an upper division school, and also based on the schools that you're applying to, it will separate it and come up with that GPA. Now, I highly encourage you to be in contact with your program itself to find out what GPA they're looking at, whether they look at your overall, whether they're just going to concentrate mainly on your prerequisites. Obviously, they're going to look at both, but some schools just tend to put a little bit more higher stake on one versus the other from what I've heard. But yeah, that's a little bit about the OTCAS. So there could be a little bit of a slight difference, but don't freak out about it, because as long as you're uploading your official transcript, your GPA is your GPA for the overall. That's really what the schools are looking at. What it is going to be different is maybe whether you're looking again at the last 60 credits or whether they're just looking at the prerequisites, because those GPAs may be a little bit different based on the classes that you're taking and stuff like that, and the prerequisites required by the schools that you are applying to. Kelly wants to know, any tips and tricks for navigating OTCAS in general, please? Now, actually, I really do think that once you create an account and you get the hang of it, it's not that bad, because I'll show you here. OTCAS, y'all have a lot of questions about OTCAS. Here you can see that OTCAS is basically divided into 4 different sections: the personal information, the academic history, supporting information, and program materials. Personal information is very basic information that you need to upload, such as your name, address, where you went to, just personal biographical, like contact info, your race. All of that is pretty self-explanatory. Have you ever committed any academic infraction? But now the academic history, that's where you're going to be uploading where you went to college, your transcripts, and your standardized test scores. but it's pretty easy to navigate. It's just 4 sections in and of itself. And then in the supporting information, that the evaluations, again, it's where you're going to be uploading your letters of recommendations and requesting for your evaluators to write those for you. And your observation hours is where you're going to be uploading your observation hours. Now, for the observation hours, what I recommend is that you have a timesheet that you create. So like that, you can have the OTs that you're shadowing just sign it off and you can upload those. But that's going to be a supplemental form that you're going to be submitting, because that observation hour slot there on OTCAS is you insert a number. So you put the name of the location, the number of hours that you did at that location, the type of setting that it is, and that is that. The way that they can verify those hours is if you upload the sign-in sheet and give them all the contact information for those places, and that's the way that they verify that. But all that is under observation hours, your experiences, that sheet that I was telling you where you get your OT to sign off on your hours. If you want to actually create your own sheet, you upload it in the documents section. So those are some general tips. It's tedious in the sense of it's a lot of work, but pretty easy to navigate once you create an account, because you just focus on the 4 different sections. And then the very last one is program materials. I really like that 4th section because there you could actually see what are the prerequisites for each and every program that you are applying to. You can also just narrow down the schools that you are interested in based on the prerequisites that you have taken and based on where it is that you are interested in living. So the program materials section is really interesting and awesome to have, even if you are a sophomore or a junior and you're not ready to apply just yet, because you can start already using OTCAS to your advantage and start learning how to navigate it now versus come July of 2021 and you don't know anything about how to navigate the OTCAS. So create an account now, honestly, regardless of what year in school you are, and if you know you're going to apply to OT school, create that account. That's my general tip for you. Let's see, what else do we have here? Angie wants to know, how did you prepare for the OT questions asked during a graduate school interview for an OT program? As far as the interview, how did I prepare? I personally did not, because I didn't have any concept of what was going to be asked of me. I did not prepare and honestly winged it. But that is not the way that I recommend that you OT geniuses do things. If you want to prepare for interview for occupational therapy school, I highly recommend that you get in touch with me and you can schedule a mock interview with me on my website, otgenius.mykajabi.com. I'm posting it right here, otgenius. I'm going to work on actually changing that to otgenius.com. So that's my website, guys. You guys can book a mock interview there, otgenius.mykajabi.com/home. Book a mock interview there, and we can actually go over 30 different practice questions that are more than likely to be asked during the interview and will help you even get ready and more confident as you approach these mock interview questions. And if you don't have access to like booking a call with me or whatever, I highly recommend that you just practice with an OT in your local area, or ask one of your professors to just ask you questions that are likely to be asked during an admissions interview, such as, why do you want to be an OT? That's probably the most basic one, and that's going to be asked of you a lot. So that definitely is one question that you should be ready and know how to answer like the back of your hand, and you should have that answer prepared. Angie, another good question, wants to know, even though OTCAS opens July 18th, if you're If you begin entering your information now, will it reset on that date and require you to redo everything? No. If you already have an account with OTCAS, that information basically stays saved. You can add things to the information. Like if that account that I was showing you right here, I could add stuff right now if I wanted to, but I can't delete stuff because the system is closed, and I can't request letters of recommendations or evaluations. So the two things that you can't really do right now, three things that you can't really do right now because the system is closed, is you can't really look at the program materials because the system is not open yet. You can't also request letters of recommendations right now because the system is closed. But you could add stuff like to the personal information section. You could add stuff, edit your academic history. It doesn't just delete. It'll stay there. Like my stuff that I put in when I was creating this account to see what, like get back into the swing of doing OTCAS again and see if anything has changed. Everything is still there. And she also wants to know, how difficult is it for a new grad to find a job in the South Florida area with the oversaturation of OTs? I think that's a great question as well. So in South Florida specifically, I think that there are a lot of jobs out there. The thing is that they don't seem to be offering a lot of full-time positions. What I constantly see being put out there are per diem positions. So it's not that you can't get a job in the South Florida area. It's where it becomes tricky is finding a full-time stable job with benefits. You ask some of my classmates, the ones that seem to have gone out of state, more particularly Texas, California, which are very lucrative right now in terms of hiring and pay, seem to just have a little bit of an easier time to find that stability. It doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it just seems to be a little bit trickier. I, for one, have 2 per diem jobs right now. They constantly need me over at Mercy Hospital where I work. That's where I'm currently needed. I got a job a few days after I passed my boards, and they just were in such a dire need of finding an OT that I passed my boards, and they wanted to interview me within 2 days, got the job right there on the spot. Next thing I know, I'm working in a pediatric clinic. And for those of you who already know me, more personal level, or hear my stories, that you know that peds, as awesome as it is and dear to my heart as it is not for me. So I, throughout that year that I was in pediatrics, was looking for a job in geriatrics, outpatient ortho, which is where my heart really is. I aspire to be a certified hand therapist and working on that. And that's where I'm personally at. But you'll find a job. It's just a matter of whether it'll be full-time, stable with benefits. Now, Moise, he sent me some questions, and I have them here. He wanted to know, what practice resources did you use for getting your license in OT? Let me actually show you all. Y'all are going to get a preview into a few years. Let me grab my book real quick. I still have them. Yeah, I have these 2 practice books were the ones that I used. I used this one for practice questions. It's called the Occupational Therapy Examination Review Guide. And I used the National MBCOT Review Study Kit by Therapy Ed. That's what I use to practice and get ready for the exam. They have online prep that you can use to get ready, as well as other resources that can help you online. Now, I also purchased AOTA's practice questions. AOTA has some resources for students as well that they can purchase as well. Do you have to apply for a license in each state you apply to? Okay, so no. Well, okay, let me backtrack. Sorry. Let me backtrack. Now, Michelle, I just saw your question. So you have to take the national board examination, and once you pass that, you can apply to a license in any state. If you're moving to Texas, for example, you need a Texas license to practice there. If you're going to practice here in Florida, you're going to need a Florida license, and you apply for your Florida license. Each state has a state regulatory board, and you submit that you passed and any other additional requirements that they need to give you the license to become an occupational therapist. So each state too is a little bit different. Like Florida, they literally just require you to pass the exam. I submitted my scores, and for me to graduate from an accredited university, I think I sent them a copy of my diploma and I got the license. It really was not that difficult of a process. Here in Florida, it was pretty easy. I know that my friend in Texas had to take an additional CEU of some sort in order to get her license. So she actually had to take a class. It was over a weekend in order for her to even apply for the license in Texas. So each state is a little bit different. Moise also wanted to know approximately how many classes do you take during OT school? During OT school, and this also depends on the program that you are going into, my personal program at Florida International University, they, with each cohort, put all of the students to go in and out of each class together. And so you're basically taking all of the classes with the same people, especially in the lectures. Your labs, you'll have different people, but I had up to as many classes here. Let me show you. I brought this out. This was actually what was sent to me in my schedule in my admissions package. They select the classes for you. My first semester, I took 14 credits. Second semester, 16 credits of graduate work. And then my summer was 6 credits and so on. So they selected the classes for me. It's not like I was, should I take this, this class this semester, or should I take it next semester? That's not how it worked. That's not how it worked for me. And I'll have you guys just think about something. So in my personal program, right, we needed to, our first year, take kinesiology, right? And if you failed kinesiology as a first year, you needed to retake it. But you also, that meant that you could not take one of your year 2 classes. So what happens is it sets you behind. Failing one class in OT school can mean that you actually graduate a full year later than your peers. That in and of itself can be very scary and puts a lot of pressure on you. Yeah, it'll set you behind. It throws the whole schedule off, and they only offer it to each program. So meaning if you fail your first year this year, it's not offered during the fall. They still haven't come in. You can't take it during the summer. If you fail in spring 1, you need to wait till all the way to spring of your second year to be able to take that class with the first year students. It really just can set a lot of things off. Kaylee Gayuzi, she wanted to know what was the biggest challenge about starting occupational therapy school. That is a great question. When I was starting off OT school, I would say that the biggest challenge I faced, honestly, was just a lot of fear. A lot of fear, because I had failed classes. And like I said earlier, if you fail one class, it throws off your whole graduation schedule, because you're supposed to take each class with your complete cohort, and you're supposed to start together, you graduate together, you take your classes together, and it just throws you off from your graduation date, and you need to wait, throws off your field work date even, possibly, depending on what class it is that you failed. Each school is a little bit different, so please do keep that in mind. So I just, that just scared me. The thought of failing and holding on to a lot of false beliefs about myself, that I was not either good enough for the program or smart enough as my peers. I mean, that's tough. But at the end of the day, I graduated with a 3.6 GPA, and I will have you know that as scary as the whole failing thing is, about you just failing one class and, that pushing your graduation date a whole year later, graduate school students just tend to do better in their course of studies for a few reasons, according to research. Number one, they tend to get better grades because their focus of study is already so concentrated. I wasn't taking classes about music, like the history of music or Western civilization or anything like that, that were not my strong suit and, really didn't capture my interest. I was taking classes to become an occupational therapist, which did catch my interest, and it was all that we were studying. It was all that my classmates and I were talking about. So what ends up happening there is that you all as a group, as a cohort, tend to be on the same page and tend to know what is going on in the class as a group. So it is a little bit easier to, in that sense, just pass because you have other people in your corner that you can rely on. I think also what just makes it easier is the fact that if you get selected to get into OT school, number one, these programs that selected you to be there already have seen that you are qualified enough to, number one, handle their rigorous coursework. And if you have gotten admitted, it's time for you to believe that you can handle it. That was my biggest obstacle. And I think that that is a challenge for many, is just the mindset aspect of things. And then, did you work while you were in OT school? Kaylee wants to know. And how did you manage your finances? I did work. I worked as a hostess and as a server at a restaurant over at Bonefish Grill. If you love that restaurant, put down Bonefish Grill. I made some side cash for personal stuff, gas, fun, books, that sort of stuff, but everything else was basically paid off through loans. And I had to manage my money wisely because it's not like a lot of it was coming in as a hostess / server. The way that I did it is I personally am a fan of Dave Ramsey. That's the person that I adhere to as far as some getting out of debt advice. He is the get out of debt guru, but I will also put into effect that he does not necessarily talk about or focus on how to generate wealth or how to basically make more as an OT, obviously, because he's not one, which is where I think your focus should be in your career, is how can you maximize the investment that you have put into occupational therapy school so you can pay off the debt, because obviously the debt is a lot. I've used Dave Ramsey's snowball effect, and what that means is that you start off with the lowest debt. I, for example, have right now one of my student loans from graduate school. Like, my undergrad is completely paid off by now, but my graduate school, I have one particular loan, for example, that is as low as $3,000 that I have in order to just wipe that debt clean. Then I have another one that is as high as $30,000. What I'm doing is the snowball effect to wipe down my debt. I am paying off the smallest one first. So I'm wiping out that $3,000 debt first. Then I'm going to focus on a $6,000 debt. Like, that's going to be the smallest one that I have. And because I no longer have to worry about that $3,000, instead of just putting everything toward a general payment and having it being spread out and then keeping that debt there for a longer period of time, I tackle one of those small debts. So that's how I tackled my student loans. Zero-based budget is how I have handled my finances. I have not been good about this. My boyfriend and I were actually talking about this, and I need to get back on this. But ideally, I would, on Excel or through the Everyday Dollar app that Dave Ramsey has, I would put how much I made every paycheck, this is how much I make this month, and I would put all my bills, and then it would budget out every single dollar and until it's just zeroes out. So that allows me to know where every dollar is going. That's how I handle my finances. I was not as astute about my finances as a pre-OT as I am now. I'm learning and growing, and I hope that has helped you a little bit. So that's how I handled it. I hope that this has helped you guys in some way and that you guys have gotten some value out of it. Have a great night, guys.